Hi, friends. I am so excited to announce my first ever international retreat. It's called Conexion del Corazon. It's located in the beautiful Bocas del Toro, Panama. It'll be at Tranquil Echo Lodge on February 11th through the 18th, 2024. Fun fact, the owner of the retreat center, Lourdes, is a longtime client and friend of mine, and she has spent the past 5 years converting her land into a full-fledged retreat center. It's where the jungle meets the Caribbean Ocean. I'll teach all my offerings, yoga, Pilates, and meditation. And the focus of this retreat is about getting out of your head and dropping into your heart, into your body. I find that there's great wisdom we can access when we drop into the body and the heart. It's also a great opportunity to have a digital detox for a week. I'll hold space for you in a way that is nourishing, and we get to enjoy the flora and fauna. It's so beautiful. We'll have direct access to the ocean, to the jungle. We'll have cleansing ceremonies, fire ceremonies, and there's so much more. I can't even list it all. So to check out all the information, you can click on the link in the show notes, or you can go to my website at ashleyweberyoga.com. There's a tab that says Panama Retreat, and I hope to see you and connect with you there.
Vibing out in the sun, we welcome everyone. Gave 101, the goal is having fun. I'm happy, like I told ya. I'm stretching out, doing yoga, not stopping till it's over. Don't want the day to be done. I'm happy, like I told ya. I'm stretching out, doing yoga, not stopping till it's over. Don't want the day to be done.
Welcome, friends, to Yoga and Podcast. This show highlights the science and brings the magic of yoga and mind-body practices down to earth for the everyday person to help you live your best life. I'm your host, Ashley Weber, a yoga and Pilates teacher and forever student who is oh so curious about all things yoga and. I'm super excited to share with you this upcoming conversation. Now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode, y'all. Disclaimer before enjoying this episode, know that there are mentions of suicide, which might be triggering for some listeners. If you are sensitive to this, please pause this episode and enjoy our other past episodes of Yoga and Podcast. Joining us on today's episode, she is the founder of the nonprofit organization Hope for Healthcare, Tabitha Childers. How are you today, Tabitha?
Hi, Ashley. So good to see you. I'm doing really well. Thank you. I have to tell you that I checked out your meditations on Insight Timer last night and this morning. So good. Thank you for putting out such amazing content.
Oh, well, thank you for listening. I really appreciate that. That's very sweet of you to say that.
Definitely. And thank you so much for the support and for having me on your amazing podcast.
Oh, thank you. I am delighted to have you on. We met through a mutual friend, and I love what you're doing in the world. And so I want to know all about what you're doing, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show. And I feel like other people need to know about this. It's just such a wonderful, first knowing about hope and all about hope and what that means, and then how you have this organization, Hope for Healthcare, is really exciting stuff. So let's start, because I have like so many things to ask you.
Yeah.
Let's start with, what is your definition of hope?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's evolved over time, but I thought that it might be better to define hope by telling you the story of what led me to hope in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah, my story really, I would say, isn't all that unusual. I've been a nurse for 20 years and a nurse practitioner for 11. I was a single mom living paycheck to paycheck for many years. And about 4 years ago, I burned out. I had nothing left to give myself, my kids, my colleagues, my patients. So for most of my career, I worked in emergency medicine and then in trauma surgery. Those are two of the like really high intensity and stressful areas. And when I say that I burned out, I mean complete and utter despair, really. I felt hopeless, helpless. I had kids, bills, enormous student loan debt. But that was it for me. I didn't really have anything else, and I felt completely trapped in my career. Around that time, and probably even, before that, but I just really didn't quite know what was going on, as I began to have chronic and intrusive suicidal thoughts.
Oh no.
I thought about it all the time, and honestly, it felt like the only way to escape. Something that I just didn't have any more fortitude to continue. So what ironically saved me was that I personally got sick. I was forced to take a break from healthcare. I developed masses in both my thyroid and in my uterus. And I had to have 2 major surgeries at that time.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, I think you and I probably both know that stress and trauma can cause disease. And I truly believe that my illness was most certainly in part related to the stress of my career.
Oh,
So the good news is that both masses were benign. So
that's wonderful.
yeah. But when I went back to work, it also happened to be at the height of the pandemic. And I didn't want to go back to the hospital. So in like this really strange twist of fate, I got a job in a ketamine assisted psychotherapy clinic. Okay.
Wow.
I know, like the plot thickens, right?
Wow.
So, and as part of my training, I went through 2 experiential ketamine journeys, and they completely changed my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Almost immediately, I kid you not, the color began to return to the world.
Oh.
And I took full advantage of the integration of my journeys. I did new things and creative things with my mind and my body, like origami and hula hooping. I went to yoga teacher training right there in Austin, Texas. And I started a nonprofit organization. And I've been teaching yoga and hula hooping class ever since.
I didn't know about the hula hooping. I knew about the yoga. Wait, so let's talk about the ketamine.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell me more. I know nothing about this.
So ketamine is something that we use in clinical practice for depression, PTSD, for anxiety, chronic pain. We administer ketamine at sub-anesthetic doses, so it's low doses, and it helps you to it has several properties. It's anti-inflammatory in the brain. It is antidepressant. It helps to produce something called BDNF in the brain, which helps to promote neuroplastic states. So it can really help you to see and imagine your life differently, to imagine a world beyond the narratives that you've been given as a human up to that point.
Oh, wow.
So we see fairly quick resolution many times of depression and suicidal ideation with ketamine. So it just, like I said, very, very strange twist of fate, very, very wonderful experience for me. So yeah, ketamine.
Wow.
Yeah.
So going back to hope.
Back to the question.
Yeah. So your definition of hope.
Yeah. So hope is what I found when I was able to see and believe that my present and my future could be better than my past, and that I could actually take steps to make it so. I really, really do credit ketamine for helping me to find courage and creativity to imagine my life differently and to create multiple pathways toward meeting my goals. So I've come to think of hope today more like being empowered to believe in my dreams again.
Oh, wow. Hope, being powered to believe in your dreams again. That is beautiful. So then what is the science behind hope? Because I know we talked about there's some science there.
There's a lot of science there. I'm so glad you asked. So I learned most of what I know about hope from Chan Hellman. He's a professor and hope researcher at the University of Oklahoma. His work really inspired me to create a model of hope for healthcare workers and healthcare organizations. So recall that hope is the belief that the future can be better and that you have skills, power, and resources and agency to make it so. Hope can be measured, it can be taught, and it can be strengthened. And you can actually go right now to hopescore.com and find out what your score is.
Oh, cool. You can see
cool.
how much of a hopeful person you are, basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Hopescore.com. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and the research has shown that higher hope is one of the strongest predictors of academic success.
Oh.
At work, higher hope means decreased burnout, improved critical thinking, engagement, and productivity. Hopeful people have improved outcomes in traumatic injuries, HIV, cancer, diabetes. Wow. And the one I love the most, Ashley, is that in all studies of hope is the single most important predictor of mental well-being.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
It's so huge. Hope is so powerful that we should all be learning hope for ourselves. And then as healthcare workers, teaching it to our patients.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Powerful stuff.
Powerful.
And I feel like there's just something about hope, optimism, like maybe they're kind of neighbors, friends, BFFs. There's something there, right? Like optimism, hope, like is there a correlation there?
Yeah, I think, optimism implies that things can be better.
Yeah.
I can believe in my dreams again. I can be optimistic. But if you're coming from a place of depression, anxiety, dysregulation, distraction, disconnection, that's almost the opposite of optimism or empowerment. Yeah. So, put simply, hope is really about three things: goals, pathways, and agency. So, and it's a really important thing to think about here. A lot of this type of hope thinking or pathways thinking is truly shut down by nervous system dysregulation, trauma, depression, and anxiety. I think I probably just described the majority of our country right now.
Yeah.
Not healthcare workers, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And sadly, healthcare systems very often shut down pathways that healthcare workers identify would provide them with more hope and build sustainability into the profession. And this is, I think, largely in part to financial, administrative, and cultural constraints. And I've heard some folks calling this institutional betrayal lately. And I think that's a really great way to say it.
Institutional betrayal. Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. So how has yoga helped you personally in all this?
That's a great question too. I have come to believe that where ketamine broke my head open, yoga broke my heart open.
Oh. Yeah.
And I'm really not sure that I could have answered that question until recently. I've practiced yoga like a lot of people for a number of years, but I was I was a hot yoga yogi. And I never really had, embraced any part of the 8-limb path or things like that, so it isn't to say that yoga wasn't helpful. Yoga, it was very helpful for me. And I definitely credit it for helping me survive the stress of being a healthcare worker for so many years.
Yeah.
But, yoga as I know it now has helped me get back in my body. Yeah, but that really didn't happen for me, for real, until I met my teacher, Swami Jayadevi.
Oh,
here
cool.
in Atlanta. But I think it's safe to say that I was quite a daydreamer most of my life, and healthcare for me was actually a great choice because as a profession, we evaluate patients, we consider, various diagnoses, we create plans. It was like this mental exercise that I loved for probably around 2 decades, but until I
Yeah.
couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, healthcare is so task oriented and complex and busy that I often neglected my own physical, emotional, and spiritual needs.
Mm.
There very often were times in shifts where I couldn't eat, couldn't take a break, couldn't use the bathroom.
Oh,
So, I became very disconnected from my body's own needs and my own internal state. So, getting back in this body right here was probably one of the most important aspects of my own post-traumatic growth.
wow.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about your yoga teacher training. What came out of it? Specifically, what was your final class project?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I love this story because I never felt more out of my comfort zone than in my yoga teacher training, because it was this trauma informed training and I went to it because I needed it personally.
Mhm.
But every class they would ask us to check in. How are you feeling? And I couldn't name a feeling inside me to save my life during that time. I had no neuroception, no interoception. I was just like, I'm just here to heal. Somebody help me, and
Uh,
so I would make things up, or I'd be like, pass, or I until ultimately in the end I got a little bit better at sort of noticing what I was feeling. But in the end, we were given an assignment to create a community yoga program. My
oh,
teacher, Jen Wooten, challenged us to create something that would be helpful to a community that we belong to. And Hope for Healthcare was born
oh,
from this project.
I love it.
I know, I heard Jen too.
Yeah, she was also my teacher.
That's so special. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
Small world.
Small world, very small. Love her. She's actually involved in Hope for Healthcare now.
So cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
please tell us more about Hope for Healthcare.
Yeah, I would love to. So, by now you're probably wondering if we plan to give everyone ketamine, and that's probably not a bad idea. But here's what we did do. We designed every aspect of our program to strongly promote neuroplasticity,
Mm.
creativity, and empowerment. And that's where hope is born.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Hope for Healthcare is creating real solutions to healthcare worker burnout and moral distress. And we actually truly believe that the best people to fix healthcare are the ones who are doing the work. And we're anxious to partner with a healthcare system who's ready to discover what would promote a more helpful or hopeful culture with their team.
Mm.
So we're also devoted to doing our very best to eliminate healthcare worker suicide. At this point, it is out of control, Ashley. I don't know if you've heard the recent statistics around it, but medical students are 3 times at greater risk for suicide than their peers.
Really? And they're students. They're not even
They're
out
students. They're
graduated
students.
yet. Wow.
Female nurses have twice the risk compared with the general population of women
Of suicide?
of suicide. Yeah.
What I know you touched on it earlier, like you touched on, not having breaks, not being able to use the bathroom. Can you touch on more the why? Why is it so unsustainable right now, the healthcare, being a healthcare provider?
Yeah, I definitely can. I think I would like to start by saying that healthcare workers out there right now are bleeding. They need
Mm,
CPR. It's very difficult
mm,
to hope to dream and to connect to others, and even to use your higher brain for critical thinking from a distracted, disempowered, disconnected, and dysregulated place.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of statistics out here right now that are pretty profound. 40% of doctors and 60% of nurses are burned out. 20% of doctors and 50% of nurses plan to leave their clinical practice. The median age of nurses is in their 50s, and the suicide stats that I mentioned earlier. And one statistic with a very personal story for me is that 75% of workplace assaults occur in healthcare facilities.
Oh,
right.
Wait, you said 75%?
75%.
Wow, that
It's hard
is,
to imagine.
I would not have known that. Oh,
Right. It's really hard to imagine. But when I was a trauma surgery nurse practitioner, I admitted a husband and his wife to the hospital. They'd been in a car accident. And he had a fairly mild injury, we'll say like a couple of rib fractures, but he was stable. They asked us to admit him because he was older, just to keep an eye on him. So about a day and a half later, the nurses called me to his room to evaluate him. They said he's extremely confused. He wants to get out of the bed, but we don't want to let him out of the bed because he's too confused. And so I went up to the room to evaluate him, and he kept saying, let me out of this bed. They're trapping me in the bed. Please let me get out. I just want to walk around. And so I said, okay, get out of the bed. Let's walk around, because sometimes, especially with older adults, if you restrain them in a bed, that it can cause confusion. And so, I let him get up. He pretty promptly walked around the room, wrapped my stethoscope around my neck, and said that he would kill me if I didn't get him out of the hospital.
Oh my God.
Right. It took 5 nurses to pull him off of me.
Oh my God. That's traumatic.
It is traumatic.
That is, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That is horrible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So what came from that is that we had to sedate him.
Oh.
And then after that, we had to intubate him and put him on a ventilator. He was on a ventilator for probably a week and a half, if not more. He didn't leave the hospital for weeks. He came into the hospital with a normal mental status. He left the hospital and was discharged to a nursing home. He didn't even know who his wife was at that point.
Oh no.
And what he had developed was something called delirium. And
Oh.
I got really interested in it for obvious reasons, because of what happened to me. But I went to Vanderbilt, and I took this course called ICU Liberation. And it was this whole course on how to prevent delirium in patients, because delirium, and since it's preventable, actually, we should do it. We have a moral obligation to our patients, and our patients actually believe and expect that we're doing the right things and the best things for them.
Yeah.
So I brought this whole program back to my hospital, and I gained the tiniest little bit of traction. But what the program required was more nursing staff, more money, more time, more surveillance of your patients, and more steps and things like that. And ultimately, it didn't catch on. And it was one of the reasons why I left the hospital setting forever, was that it created in what we call moral distress for me. And that is, it's that I know the right thing to do for patients, but I can't do it because of like institutional and restraints and financial constraints and staffing and things like that. And that to me is just unacceptable. I don't think that we should ever cut corners, but that's one of the things that causes moral injury. And a lot of moral injury can lead to suicidal ideation, repetitive moral distress type situations, and then just again not being able to take care of your own body, and then self-care and things that kind of fall by the wayside when you're working shifts and spending so much time in the hospital. But I want to say also that my organization never checked on me. There was nothing in place that that I could like turn to help me discharge that trauma. You know, it was kind of like, well, that's part of the job,
Oh,
right? That's part of the job.
yeah.
Other things that I think about when you ask, you know, why healthcare workers are having, you know, such a hard time right now is like we have board members on Hope for Healthcare that lead or work on units that have a 70 to 80% vacancy rate for registered nurses right now.
Oh, wow.
Right. Healthcare workers, they're overworked. They're forced to do this in precarious situations where they don't have enough team members to provide the quality of care they want to give. There's also a surprising amount of lateral violence out there in healthcare, and that's violence that is against each other.
Oh, really? Like competition or?
Interesting. They say that in nursing, there's a saying that's been around forever, and it's that nurses eat their young.
Oh,
I right. It sounds disgusting, right? But I've seen it over and over again in practice. We're just not very kind to each other,
ah,
especially the older nurses that are training the younger nurses, and even and then that the attitudes are sort of contagious, right?
uh-huh, uh-huh.
You know, and medical students are often trained on a shame and intimidation type model. You know,
Oh,
many healthcare providers have been taught that it's completely unacceptable to make a mistake. You know, we know that's impossible though, because you know we're humans and
yeah.
humans make mistakes, and so ultimately it's an absolute setup for imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that sounds very much like, well, just a toxic setup. Hope for healthcare. Um, Asset to the community. What would happen when hope for healthcare just starts to take root, take on, spread out into the world? Like, what will the world look like with this organization blooming and expanding?
Yeah. Well, a few things that about our program that I want to mention is that our program includes healing practices like yoga therapy, arts and medicine, and vibrational sound therapy, and other healing practices as well. We're also creating an empowerment self-defense workplace violence prevention program. So
Oh,
after sharing what I've shared with you, it probably comes as no surprise that many healthcare workers would likely report that they don't feel safe at work.
oh,
Yeah, empowerment self-defense is really powerful because there's a strong focus on empowerment, which actually builds hope. So, but it's also focused around nonviolent communication skills, boundary setting, de-escalation techniques, and physical skills that we use only when absolutely necessary to protect ourselves. Finally, we're also launching a peer support program where we actually teach folks to go back and start peer support groups in their own healthcare communities, because we know that like being a part of a community, having people that care about you, supporting other people, all those things actually build hope. Again, we've really gone to great lengths to make sure that everything about this program is empowering, it's hope building. And we're experiencing a public health crisis right now like I've never experienced in my career. And the coronavirus really only shined a spotlight on it. So, you know, it's really important to create real solutions to moral distress and burnout. And we are also going to be raising funds for families that have lost a healthcare worker to suicide
mhm.
and or unintentional overdose, which we're also seeing a good bit of as well.
Wow.
Yeah, we truly believe that our outcomes will continue to be low and our job vacancies will continue to be high until we can restore the hope and health of the folks that are at the bedside doing this work day and night.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we expect to see when we get this program out here. Is it's looking like it's going to be a 4-day program with continued support that we offer. And we want to create or help our healthcare workers to create a career that's reflective of their goals, their morals, their ethics, their values, and that's sustainable for their entire career. And why shouldn't it be?
Yeah. Well, where can we find you out in the world? How can we connect to this lovely organization?
Thank you for asking. We can connect at hopeforhealthcare.org and on Instagram at Hope for Healthcare USA. Another thing I want to mention is how folks can get involved with our organization. First thing we're doing right now is we have these amazing t-shirts. So these are Hope t-shirts, and on the back they say, "Are you okay?" And the reason they say, "Are you okay?" is because we were having a conversation with our board members, and one of the nurses said, "I just wish someone would ask me if I'm okay, because I'm not okay." So please reach out to your healthcare family members and colleagues. Check on them. Ask them if they're okay. Create community. You can get one of these from our website. It feels pretty important to mention here that as an organization, we are actively working to identify a nursing or medical school and a hospital where we can pilot our 4-day program. So if anyone listening is interested in what we're doing and knows of a location, please connect with us. We're also looking to create relationships with foundations that have a strong interest in healthcare workers and the future of healthcare quality in this country. Finally, I would really love to close with a quote from Barbara Sher, who once said, "We depend on each other's dreams coming true." I think this couldn't be more true than in healthcare.
Thank you so much, Tabitha, for being on the show. It was so lovely to get to know you and your organization.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's really great to be here. Nice to see you. And I hope we can connect in the real world.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
All right. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you receive value from the show, please write us a 5-star review, or you can text this episode to just one friend who you know will love yoga and podcast. We thank you so much in advance for the huge favor. Word of mouth helps support the show in reaching a greater audience, and we could not grow without you. If you want to connect with us, our email is yogaandpodcast@gmail.com. The and is spelled out YOGAAND podcast@gmail. Please follow us on Instagram at Yoga and Podcast. We are now on TikTok. The handle is also Yoga and Podcast. When you follow us, we will follow you right back on both platforms. Music is by Mama Duke. Graphics, guest booking, and media by me, your host, Ashley Weber. I am so grateful for you. Thank you for listening.